Welcome to DAX Machina, with your hosts, Naomi Finn, Steve Wildman Munrotis, and D.A. Roberts. Join us as we explore writing, books, authors, and all things horror. We will delve into the sightings, reports, encounters, and tales of monsters. We will also explore the writings of D.A. Roberts along with others in the horror genre. We will investigate the possibilities that monsters may not be safely locked away in the pages of books. They might just walk among us even now. Grab some popcorn and lock the doors. It's going to be a creepy journey. Welcome to DAX Machina.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to another edition of DAX Machina. Joining me tonight, we have Steve Wildman Munrotis, Carrie Pocket Doc Davis. Gentlemen, how you doing?
Doing very, very well, sir. I've
Awesome.
yet begun to defile myself.
Well, it is early.
It is.
Doc, how the hell are you?
Wyatt, I am rolling.
Never
Never gets old.
Never gets old. That movie's the best.
Not. I had to borrow your steam there a little bit, Doc.
Hey, brother. There's plenty of love. Plenty of love.
As long as you're not playing a nocturne, we might get censored if you're playing that.
Frederick freaking Chopin.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and I want to say thank you to everybody that reached out to me with the death of my aunt. The funeral was today. I've only been home about an hour. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody that reached out. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you folks. You guys kind of put a smile on my face when it was a pretty dark day, just when you sat down tonight and say prayers to whoever you say them to, just remember my family. There's a lot of folks still pretty busted up over it, me included. I'm gonna miss her, but I don't want to get too maudlin. I want to get back on the subject. Tonight we are going to be talking about Bigfoot and the Highway of Tears. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Highway of Tears, there is a section of highway in British Columbia, Canada, they would call it the Highway of Tears. It's approximately 450 miles long, and it runs through some of the densest wilderness in Canada. It's incredibly remote. There's very few places to pull off where you could get gas or anything even like that. It's just this remote stretch of highway. And since the 1970s, people have been going missing along this highway. And the majority of them are Native American women. First Nations, as they refer to them in Canada. And in no way, shape, or form is me discussing cryptids with this, or in relation to this, is meant to demean this in any way. This is a horrible tragedy, and the Canadian government ignored it for 20 years. Mm-hmm. The first disappearances were around 1970 that they know of. And the RCMP didn't start officially investigating until 1998, and they're still no closer today to figuring it out. But the reason why I wanted to discuss a possible cryptid connection is some of these missing cases, many of them actually, are very much along the lines of the David Paulides missing 411 cases. They're vanished with no trace. Were last seen walking along the highway. And I'm not saying that this couldn't be a case where some of them were possible. They've looked into the possibility of a serial killer. They've looked into animal attacks and things like that. But animal attacks, as we've discussed many times in the past, animal attacks leave evidence. Animal attacks leave blood. They leave chunks of clothing. They even leave tissue or bone. None of that has ever been found. And there's just we're not talking 4 or 5 people. There are dozens of people that have gone missing over the last 50 years along that section of Lonesome Highway in Canada, and some of them are mysterious enough that I think it warrants considering that it's possibly that some of them have been carried off. I mean, we've looked at Native American accounts going back hundreds of years of Bigfoot-type creatures coming into camp and carrying off people, specifically women, sometimes children, sometimes men, but most of those stories revolve around Bigfoot carrying off women. In fact, recently they had a story on Dixie Cryptid about an account that was given to him by a retired RCMP officer about where they took a special group into the woods and rescued a bunch of people that had been held captive by Bigfoot. So the idea of doing this show was not just to discuss the possible connections with cryptids, but to bring attention to this case, because there's so many people that have gone missing along there, and it's been largely ignored by the media, and it's really something. It's tragic, it's horrific, and it needs all the attention we can get put on it. So if we can discuss cryptids as a possible solution, not saying it's all of the solution, but if we can bring cryptids into it and discuss it and get people to really focusing on it, maybe some of these can get solved. Maybe some of them could even be brought home if they're still alive. And then, I really hope that they are. Hey, we just got our first super chat of the night. Tanya Willis, thank you so much for $20 super chat. She says, good journeys to your aunt and peace to your family. DA Canada's, what is it? Oh, MIW Awareness Day, 05/05/22. Well, we'll take part. We'll definitely be taking part in that. Thank you for pointing that out. And thank you for the super chat. This is something that it definitely needs more attention. And again, I was pointing out that some of these are straight out of the playbook for the missing 411. If there is a possible cryptid connection, then it needs to be explored. Every possible solution needs to be explored, be it serial killer, be it opportunistic killers, being it animals, being it cryptids. Every bit of attention that we can get onto the subject, and the more people that know about it, the awareness and it requires more exploration into the subject. So we're going to talk about the cryptid possibility, the cryptid links to it, and hopefully bring a little more awareness to the situation. Steve, Doc, have you guys looked into this a little bit more?
Well, I have a bit, and it is interesting that it's this particular stretch of road. I understand it's a pretty prominent trucking route. It's kind of like the I-44 corridor here in the States. And, you can't help it. I don't know, I'm not trying to play devil's advocate because I totally believe that there's cryptic connections there. But, you're dealing with an area of highway where sometimes the people that go traversing it don't want to be found. And unfortunately end up meeting a sticky end, at the hands of some opportunistic, piece of crap.
Predator.
Some kind of predator. I think it's probably the nicest thing you could use. I was trying to think of what I could say that wouldn't be censored. And, and it's so unfortunate that, you're dealing with First Nations peoples that are being the victims of this. I can't help but wonder if maybe it's not getting the attention that it should just because of the race factor. If it was, it sounds horrible, but if it was a bunch of middle-class white people, maybe they would take it more seriously.
I totally agree.
It's tragic. What do you think, Doc?
I concur 100%, man. And Tanya Willis just pointed this out too. And I was going to mention that it's a very densely wooded area. It's very isolated. So perfect for somebody opportunistic, perfect for a cryptid because not many people around there except for the traffic on the roadways. And, look at all the Native American women that go missing and are murdered on reservation land in the United States every year, and it's never spoken of. And so I think that is a definite problem, because it's not, like you said, if it was a bunch of middle-aged white folks, it would definitely be getting some attention, but it's not. But the fact this has been being documented since the 60s, I believe. DA had it. What in the 60s?
It was either late 60s, early 70s, right around 1970.
Yeah.
I think some of the first ones were right about the time I was born.
Yeah, I mean, and like we were saying the other night, and it's not going to make news until it starts gaining some traction, and are like, this is too obvious to ignore. There's a connection, whether it's trafficking, whether it's a serial killer, where it's cryptids, where it's just opportunistic dirtbags. Who knows? But it definitely needs to be delved into.
Well, the thing is what really made me think about it is some of the cases are, again, very much like the missing 411 cases. Mm-hmm. I'm certain, and I'm not going to ever claim that 100% of this can be explained by cryptids. I say the same thing about missing 411 cases. Some of those are just extremely weird circumstances. But in the case of the people that are missing along the Highway of Tears, some of them are simply just too weird. I mean, just zero trace. People that passed them on the highway said, "Yeah, I saw them along mile marker such and such. They were walking along the highway, and then they're never seen again." And yeah, it could be opportunistic killers. It could be somebody stopping in a semi and picking up a hitchhiker. It could be a very, very prolific serial killer that's been in operation, or more than one. There's been a serial killer stories about truckers along the U.S. highways. That's the perfect opportunity. I mean, you pick up a hitchhiker or someone at a truck stop, and they're pretty much at your mercy once they're in that truck, and they're driving through all these remote areas where they could drop a body. However, they do find remains, but in this case, they're not finding anything. Some of these cases are just absolutely just puff of smoke gone. And that's the same thing with the missing 411 cases that gets us so intrigued. It's the unexplainable aspects. It's the unknown factors in this. When somebody was seen walking down the highway, and then when they get to a dense stand of trees, they're never seen again. Could it be, a bear? Could it be a mountain lion? Could it be, a predator in a vehicle? Absolutely. But we can't ignore the possibility that it's something unexplainable like a Bigfoot, and just ignore that possibility. Because when you focus on one target, you ignore the other possibilities. You can't rule out anything. And the fact of the matter is, and I can tell you this from when I was an officer, you have to make your theories fit the evidence, not make the evidence fit your theories.
Right.
Wherever the evidence takes you, you got to explore. And some of these are so absolutely mysterious disappearances that you can't rule it out.
Yeah, I mean, I would even honestly, at this point in the game, since it's been going on for so long, I would even possibly discount the serial killer, unless it's like a family of like the Hills Out of Eyes or something like that. Because if this started back in the 60s, 70s, you're talking serial killers probably at least in the 20s or something like that. So that dude would not be very, very young. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he'd be at least 70.
Yeah, so that they wouldn't be probably too spry. I don't know. I know some spry 70-year-olds, but not too spry. So that's another thing that I would even discount that. So now you're looking at, okay, what are the other options? Sex trafficking, that's been considered a possibility. But I mean, the fact the cryptid's there, and we just dropped it. They dropped the map. I think it was Lene dropped that map the other night. Shows that cave system, because that's right up through the Canadian Rockies, and we've seen the cryptid sightings, the missing persons, and the cave systems all kind of correlate here in the States. So I'd lean that way.
I totally agree. Mark Napier. Hey, Mark, hope you're feeling better. I know you just had surgery, buddy. I hope you're feeling better. Mark said, I would imagine a lot of those women are carrying protection against bear attacks. Yeah, if you're going through the wilderness areas, they tell you in Alaska, up in Denali, if you're going out on the trail, you better take bear spray. So I can't imagine they went out there with nothing. And I'll tell you, bear spray, if it works on a bear, it's going to work on a person. So if they've got bear spray, they've got a deterrent. And that's not saying that they didn't feel threatened, and could have been something along those lines. But again, considering the sheer numbers of them, and the fact that many of them vanished without any trace whatsoever and nothing has ever been found, leads me to think that something really weird is going on out there, and we need to look at all the possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aside from the dense wilderness and the density of the cave system there, what's so special about this area compared to the rest of North America? Why would there be such a concentration of things?
Well, one of the things is the remoteness of the area. And, we've got sections of highway. Steve, you and I can attest to just how Spartan it is driving through areas of the Mark Twain. But the Mark Twain, when you compare it to the forests of British Columbia, the Mark Twain looks like a city park. Mark Twain is thick woods, but we are talking, untouched, almost forest primeval. This is a 450-mile section of Highway 16, which runs from Prince George, between Prince George and Prince Rupert, British Columbia. and a good chunk of the women were indigenous women. And this is saying the first of it was started in 1970. The first one was in 1970. So that's as old as I am. I mean, I'm 52 this year.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
And they don't. And the problem is they don't even know exactly how many have gone missing along that road. They're estimating it above 40, but the Native Americans in the area, the Native American tribes, are saying it's much, much higher. That they just have so many people that they never looked for, and it's horrifying.
So DA, to jump on that one, what in that area, in that particular 450-mile stretch of roadway, what are the cryptid sightings up there, and how often are they? Is it something all the time?
British Columbia is a veritable hotbed of cryptid sightings, mostly Bigfoot. There's been films come out of that area. I think it was British Columbia where the logging footage of that one chuck in a tree was filmed. British Columbia is where the Albert Ostman story comes, where it was a trapper who was abducted by a Bigfoot. I mean, there's so many stories coming out of that area of people that have had encounters with Bigfoot. It's an area that I would consider, well, it's directly connected to the Pacific Northwest. I mean, it's right above Oregon and Washington, Northern California, just straight up. So considering how many Bigfoot sightings are range from Northern California all the way up through Washington, including tons of people who have gone missing on Vancouver Island. I mean, per capita, there is a massive amount of people that have gone missing on Vancouver Island. But you just continue that straight up into British Columbia and on up into Alaska, and that's where you start running into the really aggressive stories, like the one we had on here the night from drawing a blank on his name. I'm sorry, man. I apologize. I am horrible with names.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either. Yeah, but he said they were extremely aggressive up there. And then you look at the track of the Rockies going up, and tons and tons of sightings all the way through there because of that dense wilderness and places to hide with the cave systems.
Derek Buckles has a good point. He says, has David Paulides had any of these cases clustering that area? David Paulides has been profiling a lot in that area, but I could not find a map other than the one that I was sent the other night, and I will bring that one up just while we're talking here. But it's more of a global map. These are disappearances around the world. And if you look right up to the left side of straight up from Northern California, you'll see that those bright red spots that run all the way through British Columbia and all the way up into Alaska. Yep. So many missing people from up in that way. But he asks, has David Paulides had any cases clustering in that area? He's had a lot of cases in that area because that's why if you look up the missing 411, the website is actually the Can-Am Missing Project, the Canadian American Missing Project.
And if you look at that map, you're looking at mountain ranges in a lot of those areas. You got
actually, they kind of correspond with mountain ranges.
Ouachitas, the Ozarks, the Smokies to the east, the Rockies to the west, the Sierra Nevadas. Yeah, all of that.
And mountains tend to have a lot of caves.
Yep. Just
Fred,
saying.
Anthony pointed out, it says Fred. Anthony, I've sent you a link a couple of times, man. I'm hoping to get one of them to work. John Doe's here tonight. Tony Harris says, I read about this guy that was literally kids to order. Someone wanted, let's say, an 8-year-old. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's human trafficking at its worst. And I tell you, that as a cop, cases involving children and human trafficking were the hardest for me to deal with because those are the ones that just made you so mad that I won't even go into that. Sam Melton says the BFR website has 134 reports for British Columbia. And considering how sparsely populated British Columbia is, that is a lot. And then we're talking about all the ones that didn't come forward. I watched a documentary about Bigfoot hunting in British Columbia, and one of the guys they interviewed goes, "Yeah, ask anybody around here. they may not tell you on camera, but everybody's got a Bigfoot story.
Right.
He's either they've seen it or someone they know has.
Yeah. And again, there's probably, for every one that's reported, there's probably 10, 20 more that are not, simply because people don't want to be stigmatized.
Right. John's got reiterating exactly what I was saying. BFR reports will be significantly lower than the actual number of encounters as well.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the stigmas of our society. I mean, granted, the three of us are probably more on the fringe than your typical, American.
Mhm.
But, if some funny shit goes down and Bigfoot's involved, I'm going to be real reluctant to mention anything about it because I don't want them to think I'm crazy. I've got a nursing license and a professional career to maintain there.
Josh Dalton says DA has the RCMP done an undercover operation into this. Not as far as I know, but to be honest, from everything I've read, the RCMP response to this has not been spectacular. They didn't even officially admit it was happening until 1998.
Wow. When there was just too much.
Yeah, when there was so many, they just couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sam Melton says exactly. The BC area has many sightings as all other areas in Canada added together. British Columbia is the Canadian hotbed. It's directly connected to the Pacific Northwest. In fact, technically, it's part of the Pacific Northwest because it attaches to the Pacific right with the juncture of Alaska. So it is still technically part of the Pacific Northwest, even if it's the Canadian portion. So that whole area is been known to be a hotbed for Bigfoot sightings, dating back to as long as they've been taking accounts, and according to the Native Americans, a lot longer. Ellen Harrington. I agree. The thought that of human traffickers doing that, it just makes me sick as well.
Mark Napier makes a very good point. He says, would you say that there's less abducted in the lower 48 because we hitchhike and walk less? I would say the Canadian culture is probably a little bit more open than we are. Interesting point.
Yeah, I want to also, one of the things we're dealing with is, and I don't want to make this sound bad, but it's just a statement of truth. It's the poverty level among some of these First Nation tribes. They just don't have the money. Like, a lot of the U.S. Native American tribes are getting into casinos, and they're starting to actually raise the level of living, the standard of living on a lot of these reservations. But the U.S. government and the Canadian government pretty much did the same thing. They shoved them onto reservations and left them to fend for themselves.
Yep.
I mean, you can go back through our history, and I'm a big history buff, and I'm the first one to sign up if it comes to time to defend my country. But our country's done some really shady shit, especially to the Native Americans.
Amen. I mean, these people, these poor folks are living like in the Four Corners area. I've had a few friends that have worked down there in the clinics and done nursing contracts, and they said, man, they live in abject poverty. It's like third world or fourth world conditions down there.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. And like one of the comments on here was, the Canadian, the RCMP, to them, the indigenous people, the First Nations people, are not a priority. And that's been the same. I think it's been reiterated here in the States as well, with all the missing women, murdered women on the reservations. So, yeah, and like you said, the poverty level,
Yeah. Crystal also says, why were these people traveling by foot? Where they might have been going? Were they traveling between villages? Were they all at night? Since most of them just vanished without a trace. We don't know exactly whether it was during the day or light. And a lot of them just simply couldn't afford vehicles. They would travel to other places for employment or to stay with family. And the only way to get there was walk and or hitchhike. So an opportunistic killer could easily have picked up, some of these women, and either we've got the human trafficking option, we've got the serial killer option, but some of them just simply between 1 mile marker and the other were just gone. And and again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I've seen wild animal attacks. I've seen coyotes attack deer. And in fact, I was just talking to my wife earlier today because after the funeral, we drove around and saw some of the places in my old stomping grounds where I grew up around there. And back during the 80s, the Missouri Conservation Department had a bounty program that you could sign up and be basically a bounty hunter because of the massive overpopulation of coyotes. They'd decimated the deer population, and they were moving in and taking out livestock, and they would get together and take out a grown steer, and that's a big hit to the pocketbook for a farmer if they lose a sale cow. So Missouri Department of Conservation was offering $10 per set of ears for bounty on coyotes. And I made quite a bit of money doing that when I was a younger man. And you've got to keep the predators in check. And unfortunately, it's the same thing with the human population. We've got to locate these predators and get them in check. And even if that predator turns out to be a cryptid, they're going to have to, for one, admit it's there. If the evidence points to a cryptid, they've got to say, all right, mea culpa, it's here. What are we going to do to stop it? And I don't know if there's an easy answer, especially until they start improving the standard of living for some of these Native American tribes. Maybe, some sort of transport service, be it a bus that runs back and forth that doesn't charge much, if anything, sponsored by the government, where they could drive back and forth between these villages where they wouldn't, where they're not going to be exposed to the elements and exposed to animals. I don't know what the easy answer would be, and there's really not one that comes easily to mind. And I'm sure smarter people than me have pondered this. But my thing is, no matter where the evidence leads, they have got to follow it, even if it leads to some unknown thing dragging them off into the woods. And again, I've said for a long time, the government knows these things are real, and I would say the Canadian government is no different. In fact, the Canadian government had to put a stop to Windigo trials. Or people that were accused of being possessed by Windigo, they had to put it. The last one happened during the 20th century. We're not talking back in the 1800s. It was in the early 20th century. Mm-hmm. So, the Canadian government is very well aware of both Native American lore and things that go bump in the night. And I believe the government knows these things exist, and for them to just go, no, they don't exist, and not even explore that as a possibility is a huge disservice. We've got to follow the evidence. We've got to stop things like this, no matter where they happen. I'm not just talking the Trail of Tears. I'm talking everywhere, because human trafficking is something that's got to be stopped.
Yeah, amen. I 100% agree with that.
Well, it's sad how prevalent that's becoming now. You think that we'd be over this crap by now, and it's like it's on the rise. If anything, we have programs at the hospital where people can identify themselves as being victims of trafficking, and just the thought of that in the 21st century in our information age is just mind-numbing. And it isn't always third world people. It's not always indigenous people. It's white people. It's black people. It's everybody.
Yeah, it's not restricted to any one demographic.
Right.
Anybody can be, anybody could be a victim. Ellen Harrington said RCMP. It stands for Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I know we all joke about the RCMP being the red jacketed guys that rode on horses, but they're the equivalent of the FBI in Canada. They are the main Canadian full country jurisdiction everywhere federal police force. So they're the equivalent of the FBI, and apparently they didn't take this nearly serious enough for a long time, and I'm still not convinced they're taking it serious enough. Tanya Willis says, Mark, we actually have a fairly high numbers of MMIW in the U.S., mostly with reservation territories. It's just not reported in our media, and it needs to be.
Yeah,
it's something that it should take precedence, because it doesn't matter what socioeconomic class, what demographic, what background the person comes from, missing people should be treated as a higher priority than it is. And unfortunately, because the propensity for someone to report somebody missing and then 24 hours later they come walking in with a hangover, that tends to color the law enforcement reaction of a lot of places. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it happens. And they go, oh, they'll come wandering in a day or two after being out on a bender, and and then they never really take it serious until 72 hours have passed, or sometimes even longer. And by that point, they could be anywhere. I mean, but if it was a human trafficking case, they'd be out of the country in less time than that.
Right. Yeah, they say they'll be in later until they don't come in.
Mm-hmm.
Derek Buckle says that makes me wonder if there is a clustering. I remember that certain ancestry were more likely to go missing in 411 cases. Yeah, absolutely. I do believe there's a huge cluster up in British Columbia, but like I said, I just couldn't find a map for Canada like it did for the United States, and I take that I attribute that to being the fact that the population of Canada is so much smaller than the United States. The clusters in Canada don't look like as big a deal as they do down here, where we've got 360 million people in the United States. And according to NAMI, I think it's 3 million people a year get reported missing. Now, a good chunk of those probably, just like the cases I was saying, come stumbling in back in the house 24 hours later with a hell of a story trying to explain where they've been for the last couple of days, but not all of them.
That's
And
right.
it's the same with the missing people. There's so many people missing in the Alaskan Triangle. Some of them are found. Some of them are found within a few hours. However, every report filed is still listed as a missing persons report on the crime statistics, whether or not they're found or not. So that does directly affect the number of missing people reported in an area. However, along the Highway of Tears, these are all missing people that have not been found. No trace has ever been found. And that's the point of this. That's the point of this whole discussion tonight, is there a chance that some of it could be cryptid? I'm not saying all of it's cryptid related, but is there a chance, even if it's a small percentage, is there a chance that due to the large number of cryptid sightings in Canada and on the Native American folklore on Bigfoot propensity for carrying off Native American women, does that equate a big enough chance that you ought to take this seriously?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're going out there with tracking dogs and the dogs refuse to track, what was it Bill Engvall said? Here's your sign.
Here's your sign. Yeah, and the fact, like you said, with the indigenous tribes out there, that has been an oral history that's been passed down for generations, centuries. So how can we ignore that, along with what we've seen in the last couple of 100 years? There's been numerous newspaper reports. You've pulled stuff up on that, especially up in that area, and now this. So and with a big number of sightings, 134 sightings in a 450-mile range.
Mm-hmm. Ellen Harrington asked about MMIW. It stands for murdered and missing Indigenous women.
Mm.
Werewolf 5674 says, in all of North America, from Mexico all the way up to Alaska, indigenous women disappear, and very little's done to find them. And it's hard to say if a serial killer or trafficking. Exactly. I don't know if any of you guys have watched the TV series Longmire. But there was something pointed out on Longmire that I didn't know until when I heard it on the show. I thought, well, certainly that was made up for the show. But I looked into it. There are only two things that the U.S. government measures by blood content: dogs and Native Americans, and that's pathetic.
Mm-hmm.
That is pathetic. That's still on the law. It made me sick when I found out that was real.
Yeah. There was a really good, I'm not trying to get off the topic, but there's a really good movie out there that brought a lot of awareness to this. Jeremy Renner did, called Wind River. And,
great movie. Fantastic movie.
And it brought a lot of awareness to the MMIW here in the U.S.
Yes, and it needs to.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%, man.
I mean, if any of you guys have read my Apex Predator books, my Lakeview Man, my Codename Wild Hunt, I feature a lot of Native American characters, and I reference Native American cultures because I have a huge respect for Native American lore, Native American culture. I grew up with my Uncle Buddy being basically a second dad to me, and he was full-blood Cherokee. He married into the family. And even after he divorced my aunt, he remained my uncle because I spent so much time with him. I worked with the man. I cut timber with the man, cut firewood with the man. I've hunted with the man, fished. My dad and I had a falling out when I was still pretty young, right after my mother died. And I think I learned more about being a man and who I am today from Uncle Buddy than I did my own father. And I know that sounds bad of me to say, but it's true. My dad and I just didn't get along. And it took a long time before I could actually just straight up admit that. But yeah, it's true. Dad and I did not see eye to eye on 99% of anything, but Uncle Buddy taught me the things I needed to know, and helped a very, very, after Mom died, I had a temper that you guys would not believe. And some of that temper still comes through once in a while, but Uncle Buddy told me one time we were working together, and I got pissed off, and I ended up breaking a chainsaw because I threw it. And he looks at me and he goes, "Douglas, you're so even-tempered, you're mad all the damn time." And it I just kind of set me back on my heels. I'm like, you know what? He's right. And he really made me reevaluate not only my perspective on the world, but my views of pretty much everything. And I miss that man more than I can ever say. He was the inspiration for Jay Matoska in my books, and he's the reason I value Native American lore and Native American tradition so much. It's just something that's very sacred to me, and always will be. Lanita says poverty level of the first to be nabbed. Yeah, it's easy to make people who are poor disappear because so few people report them missing. And when they are reported missing, unfortunately, a lot of law enforcement agencies, especially smaller ones, just don't have the time or the resources to really put into it. And unfortunately, in some of the bigger cities, there are especially missing cases among homeless people. They're like, they'll show up. Right. And it's sad to say, but it's true. I never wanted to get that blasé about anything when I was a cop, and thankfully I never did. I never had to discharge my weapon in the line of duty, other than on the range. I never had to fire my weapon in the line of duty, and I count myself as having a good career because I didn't. I was very good at talking to people. I was very good at talking people down. Steve's seen it. I was very good about bringing subjects back to heel without having to resort to force.
Yeah, I always appreciated when you would show up when we'd have one of our staff assist situations, because 9 times out of 10 it'd be handled peacefully. There were certain of your peers that would show up, and it was kind of like that scene in Tombstone where you just kind of look and things get ready to go down, you're like, oh hell, because it's going to be bad. We've talked about these people before. It's like somebody's going to get an ass beating, and chances are I'm going to be involved in it. Whether I'm the offender or the casualty. And like, yeah, I don't want that.
When you could almost, and when I knew things were about to turn south, you could pretty much hear that moment when I would just sigh, because I knew there was nothing I was going to be able to do was going to avoid the situation, and I also knew exactly how much paperwork was going to be involved afterwards.
Yeah, how many reports am I going to have to write about this situation?
Yeah, I'm going to be writing reports the rest of the night over this. Tanya Willis says, for instance, look at the national attention that Gabby Petito case got. Our women and girls never get such coverage. I totally agree. And it's absolutely ludicrous that is the case. My family's been here. They immigrated from Scotland right about the time of the Civil War. My family was not part of the founding fathers. In fact, if you want to look up some really interesting history, look up the Highland clearances. That's what the British did to the Highlanders, and that's pretty much why my family ended up in North America. What the British did to the Scottish is absolutely horrible.
Yep.
And that's why my family's here today, is because of things like the clearances and fleeing what was happening to them. My family's Scotch-Irish, and at one point the Irish were traded on the stock market. They were treated as less than human. And it's a horrible thing, and it's happened so many times over the centuries. And I really, really hope we can get to a point where we can stop doing crap like that to each other. I mean, where we can see this, where everybody is valued for who they are, for what they are, what they bring to the table. And unfortunately, it's still not the case, and we've got a long way to go. But hopefully, we can take, even if it's a baby step here and there and a baby step there. Hopefully we can get to that point, because there's way too many cases of people undervaluing somebody simply because they're broke or poor, or they're Native American, or they're Hispanic, or African American. Stop doing that crap. Everybody, we're all human. And if you can ask Steve, you peel the skin back and you're not going to tell us apart.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Underneath the skin, we're all a collection of muscles and bone and blood and tissue, and without the skin, we're identical. That's why we're all able to reproduce together. I mean, if we were that different, somebody of Asian ancestry and somebody of Hispanic ancestry couldn't have a child together. But the fact that we all can basically says we're all the same.
Well, it's like when they talk about what's your race. Well, it's the human race.
Yeah, human.
There's one.
Yeah.
Human.
Color, skin deep.
It doesn't matter.
There's a few minor differences. You will talk about it in medical literature sometimes. Like, for example, African Americans tend to have more of a prevalence of sickle cell disease, and certain blood pressure medicines work better on them than they do on other people, and vice versa. And every race has these little things. But I mean, we're the same. We're the same. We're one species. We're one subspecies. We just happen to have a nice rainbow of colors.
But Derek Buckle says no one will miss lower socioeconomic classes. The homeless and the poor are completely devalued. If one of them goes missing, most law enforcement agencies are just like, "What do you mean do about it?"
Yeah, or even worse,
they'll turn up or they won't.
Solved.
Yeah, but getting off the rant and back toward the cryptid angle of this, Native American lore is filled with stories of someone going out to pick berries and never seen again. Women that were abducted from camp, taken straight out of a teepee by a Bigfoot type creature. The lore is there. Those stories exist for a reason. It wasn't some guy sitting around a campfire one time, in a Salish encampment in the Pacific Northwest and went, "Hey, it'd be cool. Let's make up a story about people going missing so we can scare the crap out of people for the next 100 years." That didn't happen. Those stories were told around the campfire to keep the oral traditions alive. Those stories were things that happened, things that they shared, so everybody would have that group knowledge. And that's the same thing. Every group ancestor dating back to the first time we invented fire, those oral traditions is how we told each other stories, how we engaged, and how people have developed and had that memory of things that happened from generations before, is because we told each other. And later, when writing was invented, we wrote them down so people would learn from the things that happened in history. So when the Native Americans say that 200 years ago Bigfoot was abducting women out of camp, I tend to say, you know what? There's some truth there. You're ignoring. What's the old phrase? You're cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Right.
Yeah. You refuse to believe in things that go bump in the night, and when you were presented with so much, not only anecdotal evidence of people saying we had these sightings, we had these encounters, we've got footprints, we've had DNA samples collected, hair samples, scat samples, and when they've had these tested, it came back, possible near human primate, and in some cases it was like when they tested the nuclear DNA, human mother, unknown father. That right there should be enough to tell people there's more going on out there in the deep woods than we know, but it's not. There are too many people that want to be like an ostrich and bury their head in the sand and believe that like I said, oh no, that couldn't possibly exist. And then someone comes in and drops a body on the desk. I'm like, Oh, yes, we've known about it. Anecdotal evidence. I saw it first. I get to name it. That doesn't work that way. It's we are well past the days when big game hunters had to go into the African bushland to kill a new species and bring it back so the British scientists can pat themselves on the back and say, oh yes, this is a new species. We'll name it. We're going to name it Lionosis diegois. I don't know. Something like that. It doesn't. We don't have to kill something to prove it exists. And our DNA and our science have progressed to the point where we shouldn't have to do that. We've collected enough not only stories and eyewitness accounts across the board. We've got lore going back hundreds of years from sightings from Native Americans. Hell, the Vikings recorded seeing creatures like this. So we've got all of this data, and they just want to go, nope, we don't see shit. It doesn't work that way, folks. It doesn't work that way. There's so much. Right.
Dude, you can't refute science. I said that the other night on the show. I mean, environmental DNA they took from a stream down in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. Environmental DNA because of some sightings down there. Not quite primate, not quite human, somewhere in the middle. So what is it?
Exactly.
It ain't a mountain goat. That's for damn sure. So yeah, exactly.
Trying to catch up on the comments. Mondoc 40 in research says, back when I was a veteran service officer, I would have older vets tell me that they were told that the U.S. government promised them something. Yeah. Our government's long on promises and short on delivery. If you look back in history, every treaty that was made with the Native Americans, we broke it. They didn't break it. We did. Yeah. Okay, you're going to have this land until the sun stops setting. 6 months later, they're like, oh, wait, we found oil or coal. We're going to take a little bit more land.
Yeah. Sioux Treaty 1868. Yeah, we're not going to come on your land. You got it. Oh, there's gold there? Nah, screw the treaty.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Gold, you say?
Yeah.
Okay, no. Okay, now this is the treaty of land. We won't violate that. Violate it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mondoc 40 on 40 in research says, my standard reply was that the Black Hills used to be Lakota land, and the government promised they would stay out of it. How did that turn out? You are dead on.
Yep.
Tony Harris says, back in North Carolina, coyote and hogs are 24/7, 365 open to hunting. Yeah, because we've learned that that letting predators run unchecked is destroying the ecosystem. That's why I'm an avid supporter of hunting. I mean, there are times when populations just go crazy, and we don't even really know why. I mean, 1 year there's not a whole lot of coyote babies born, so the coyote populations are low. When that happens, the next season deer are everywhere, and when you don't have the checks and balances of nature, you start running into things like that, and you get more and more people getting killed on highways because deer are running across the roads at all places. I actually got a phone call from a lady working the reception at Greene County one night. I was answering the phones, and the lady was mad as hell and wanted me to send a deputy out to her house. And I said, ma'am, what's going on? She goes, I want you to send someone out here to move these deer crossing signs. They need to cross somewhere else. I'm like, really? Really? You want me to send a deputy out there to tell the deer to cross somewhere else? Yeah, I'll send somebody out.
Shame on you, those damn signs.
Maybe we ought to make them in bigger letters so the deer can read it better.
Yeah, bless her heart.
Yeah.
Bless her. Yeah.
I put her on hold and was dying. I'm like, hey, LT, you're never going to guess what I got on the phone.
I would love to see Jenkins' reaction to that.
Yeah, he was amused, to say the least. Tiny Will says, bless your thoughts on transportation, DA, but there are still parts of Pine Ridge that have been without heat and electricity for years, and that's ridiculous.
Oh,
I mean, and it's not just the Native Americans. I mean, look at Flint, Michigan. How long they've known about the problem of the bad water, yet they've done nothing about it. We spend more on defense spending than the next 10 people on the defense spending list combined. Why don't we take a couple billion here and there and improve the quality of life across the country. I mean, we've got the money. I mean, freaking Bezos could eliminate poverty across the country and not go broke. I mean, he'd still be extremely wealthy. Same thing goes for Elon Musk. I mean, that dude could open schools and put in water and good plumbing on every Native American reservation and not touch his money. I mean, he could do that with the interest that you're gathering off almost $1 trillion.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, people that are that wealthy are more concerned about keeping that wealth than they are about helping the rest of humanity.
Yeah.
Mark says the Alaskan police are mostly state troopers and they are spread very thin. Yeah, a lot of towns in Alaska don't have a police force. They'll have what's called a city constable who's supposed to help keep order. And in most cases, those guys aren't even armed.
Huh. Even Barney Fife had a gun.
One bullet. Don't make me get my bullet. Let's see. I'm trying to catch up on some of the comments. John Abraham says Native American and First Nation people are treated like the caste system in India, and there's some people less than human. It's sad. I agree. It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And when you look at modern medicine, just how much we've actually learned from Native Americans, how much modern medicine was infected by Native American remedies. Doc, foxglove tea, for example.
Digitalis for atrial fibrillation.
Yep. They discovered that Native Americans would prescribe foxglove tea for people that were having heart pains.
Yeah.
And you know what? It actually worked. And the foxglove plant is where we get digitalis, which is used to treat heart disease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's just one example off the top of my head. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
I was just reading an article at dinner tonight. My son and wife and I were having that hypothetical conversation about this conflict that's in Russia and the Ukraine right now, and basically if it goes nuclear and Western life ends as we know it, and I'm like, well, I'm considering myself to be among the first culled, because I'm a type 1 diabetic. Without insulin, I'll be dead in a couple of months. Well, we found plants now that create insulin, and I'm like, how much you want to bet there's Native Americans someplace that already knew about that, and we just lost it, because there wasn't a profit in it, and scary stuff.
I mean, if there's an ailment that we suffer from, there's something that grows out of the ground to help it. I mean, that's a fact.
Tanya Willis says, amongst the indigenous populations, if the missing is male, that's the thought. When females go missing, the first thought is that they will be seen again. Sad reality. Yeah, and that movie Wind River really pointed that out and hammered that home. Even the FBI, when called to the reservation, were like, what are we going to do about it? Come on, people.
Yeah.
Treat every missing person case as if it was your kid.
Well, I think we forget the key takeaway here is they're missing people.
Right.
People. Not animals, not possessions, not whatever tangible tag you want to put on them. They're people. Find them.
Trying to catch up. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just ranting anyway.
Werewolf 5674 says, here's a question. If it's cryptid related, how are they doing? What are they doing with them? Do they keep them forever? Some of the stories that talk about the Native American stories talking about Bigfoot abducting women. There was one in particular that stands out that apparently the young lady was, for whatever reason, allowed to leave, and she returned to her village pregnant and gave birth to a baby that, and I believe she died during childbirth, and it died shortly thereafter. But it didn't look human; it looked like a Bigfoot. So, if they're close enough genetically for that to happen, what does that say about them? Does that not say that they are essentially human, just a very, very primitive one? Even if they are bigger than us, genetically, if they're that close, that's kind of terrifying, and another reason I would not shoot one unless it was, self-defense. If it's me or it, I'm going to pick me, but yeah, it's going to have to come down to that. Tanya Willis says the United States says one must have at least 16% indigenous DNA to be considered so. And the thing is if you look at people across the section, across the U.S., anybody that has had family here for multiple generations probably has some Native American blood in them at some point. I know I do. The question is just how much. My great grandfather, his last name was Hamilton. He was the sheriff of a small town in Colorado. It's a ghost town now. It's called Dove Creek. It's on the western border of Colorado. It's way out west in Colorado, but it's still there. It's a ghost town. There's a couple people that still live in the area of the town, but the ghost town is still there. And my great grandfather was the sheriff. Here's the thing. The family Bible, which crossed the Rockies twice, once moving out there and once coming back to Missouri, the family Bible lists the parentages and who had what kids and all that. For my great-grandfather Hamilton, it lists him as having 2 wives. His first wife died of consumption, which they now call tuberculosis, but she died of consumption. Am I correct about that, Doc? It was tuberculosis?
That's correct.
Okay, she died of consumption is what it says. But the Bible lists him as having 4, I think it's 6 children. It's either 4 or 6. I don't remember right off the top of my head. But it doesn't say which wife that the children were by, whether 2 of them, whether there was a split or whether they were all born from which one. But his first wife he took with him across the Rockies, and she died of consumption there. His second wife he brought back with him, and she was full-blood Apache. So at some point, depending on which way that went down, I could have a considerable chunk of Apache in my DNA. I just don't know how much. I haven't done the DNA testing for a few reasons, but I need to do it. I really need to just break down and do it because I would really like to know. And supposedly on my dad's side of the family that there's supposedly some native blood, but it's not going to be much. We're mostly Scots Irish, but even my family, who's only been here since the Civil War, has Native American blood in it. So how many other families have some percentage? Maybe it's a small percentage, but it have some percentage of Native blood. I know Doc does, and his wife does. We're all part of this country.
Yeah.
And if your family's been here more than a generation, you're Native American. Whether you're not, I'm not saying you're indigenous. I'm not saying you're of the First Nations people, but you are a native born American. You've got blood here, generations of blood here.
Yeah.
We need to stop this labeling just because they're from a First Nations tribe that somehow makes them less than the rest of us. And it doesn't. We're all one people. We are all one people, and we need to get back to focusing on that. And again, I'm getting back up on the soapbox and going crazy again. But I want to say a lot of that is Aunt Bonnie. My Aunt Bonnie, we laid her to rest today, and that's the kind of person she was. She was very passionate about treating everybody the same, about being a good person, about being a better person than you were yesterday. None of us are perfect. We all screw up. We've all said and done stupid crap in our lifetime that we're not proud of, but I don't, and it's the same with my writing. I don't try to be the best of anything. I don't claim my writing's better than anyone's. I don't put myself on any kind of pedestal. I'm just a writer. I'm a farm kid from Lebanon, Missouri, from Route 3, Route YY off of Lebanon, Missouri. And that's all I am. I'm a guy who writes. I just enjoy it. And fortunately, there's been quite a few people that have enjoyed the writing. But the thing about it is I don't try to be better than anybody else. I try to be better than I was with the last book. I try to be better than I was yesterday. I try to make my writing better each time I put words to paper. And that's how I live my life. I don't want to be better than anybody else. I don't consider myself better than anyone else. I just want to be better than I was yesterday.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, Angie says this all the time, whatever blood we got in us, it's red, and I've seen some comments on here. You cut us, we're going to bleed red.
That's right.
And she says this all the time, and she's one of the most tender, kind-hearted souls, even though she likes knives a lot, which is kind of scary. But she's like, kindness costs nothing, and if we're just better to each other, our world will be a better place. I know it might be a very idealistic thing to say, but it's true, you know.
I don't know if I completely answered Werewolf's question from earlier. I'll put it back up. Here's a question: if it's cryptid, then if it's cryptid related, what are they doing with them? Do they keep them forever? And in a lot of cases, like the Native Americans, I think they took them for at least, for a mate, maybe juvenile coming of age. There are no other tribes in the area, so they want to find something to curl up next to at night. I think they've carried a lot of people off for that purpose. And if that's the case, I would say they're not letting them go. I would say they keep them until they pass away, or until they've had a family there and don't want to leave it.
Yeah,
what do they call it? Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah. That was one of the comments made earlier was, are they carrying them off for food, for reproduction? Who knows?
Yeah.
Mondoc 40 in research says it only has to be fully enrolled in the tribes. You have to meet a certain quotum to be enrolled. Northern Cheyenne is required to be half Cheyenne, and it's different from tribe to tribe. But bottom line, end of the day, if I donate blood, that blood could go to anybody that's receptive of my type of blood. It doesn't matter who they are, what level of economic social standing, what racial background. If they have the same blood platelets as I do, they're compatible, they could take my blood. And I have a really weird, odd, rare blood type. I'm B negative, so I'm kind of a rare blood type, but not one of the rarest, but it is a fairly rare blood type. So they'd have to be as genetically screwed up as I am to take blood from me.
Yeah, that's all right. My Rachel is AB negative, and I'm A positive. She's AB negative. So the most common with the least common, and it all works out.
Tony Harris.
It is interesting. It is interesting how our perspectives change with these DNA tests. I did the ancestry thing because I was just curious, and I am so white I'm transparent, and it was almost disappointing. My family's been here since 1819. We immigrated from Germany, so I am in the 6th or 7th generation in this country. I still consider myself Native American in that regard because we've had 200 years to be invested in this, and it was a little aggravating because my family, we were raised that we don't look at race, we don't look at color. I don't have black friends. I have friends who happen to be darker than me. I don't have gay friends. I have friends who love other people than me. And I was really hoping for a little bit more diversity, but when you got this, what do you expect?
I'm sure when I do the ancestry for me, it's going to come back probably 80% potato eater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My blood type is single malt. And so.
Tony Harris says Sasquatch types all around the world are called woman stealers. I saw a carving from the 1300s of a big hairy thing trying to grab a woman and a knight on horseback trying to save her. You look at Beowulf. When they talk the epic poem Beowulf, they talk about Beowulf being this big hairy creature that they had to fight because it was tearing heads off of people. That sounds very much like some of the cases we've talked about, like the Valley of the Headless People, where people are just showing up, they're finding the body but never the heads.
Yeah.
Tanya Willis says, so dense forests could hide dogman as well as Sasquatch, and goodness knows what else would prey upon humans. Exactly. I mean, there have been cases, like especially in Puerto Rico, where chupacabras have been reported as having attacked people. John Doe says, I believe the primary reason for nabbing people is pretty simple. Humans are just another shape food comes in. I'd say, especially in the cases of dogman, If dogmen are part of these missing 411 cases, I would say that's 100% the case. I think humans are long pig. We're a tasty snack. So if any of them are stalking me, I'm high in LDL cholesterol. You don't want me. That's the bad kind.
Thankfully, my dog is allergic to pork, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
No long pig for that dog.
I got a question for you, DA.
Shoot.
What type? Because I know there are multiple types of the Bigfoot up there or around the United States. What type have been mostly sighted up there? I'm curious to know if it's the more aggressive types, or because I mean the Fred from Alaska, he said they're extremely aggressive up there, and that's pretty close and could be close in range to that type of.
Yeah. The Alaskan hairy man type seems to be the most prominent. The violently aggressive, charge people, very territorial, and some of the ones that, if you look at the 10 types of Sasquatch that was put out by Matt Squatch Presents, one of them he refers to as the Windigo type, which is a very large meat eater. It's the farther north you go, you start finding that the predators, we'll use bears as an example. Down here in the lower 48, most of the bears we deal with are black bears. Black bears are omnivores. They'll, if the opportunity presents itself to eat meat, especially if they find something dead, they'll eat it. They'll eat berries. They'll eat roots. They'll eat termites out of logs. I mean, you can find bark shredded off of fallen trees where they've been getting after the termites. So they're true omnivores. Then you get into the grizzly bears, which grizzly bears eat a lot more meat, but they are still very omnivorous. They will eat other berries. They will eat plants. They will eat whatever it is to help sustain them, especially the closer you get to hibernation time. They'll eat a lot of fish. Get farther north, polar bears. Polar bears are carnivores. They don't eat plants. They don't pick around with much of anything. If it's not meat, they don't eat it. So the farther north, the more rugged the climate gets, you're going to see these large predators are more meat based to their diet. The ones that Matt Squatch Presents mentioned as being the Windigo type are that kind of predators. Gugway are that kind of predators. And a lot of the northern sightings, especially the farther north you get up and through even Maine and up into Canada, as you cross up, the farther north it gets, the colder it gets, the more you get the descriptions of the Gugway type. The Beast of Seven Shoots, it was believed to be a Gugway. It looked very much like a baboon-headed Bigfoot. And I think the ones that are taking people up that far north are probably taking them for food. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, you look at the short growing season they'd have there wouldn't be as much plant matter, and how much plant matter would it take to support a 9 foot, 500 to 1,000 pound critter? That's a lot of grass.
Mm-hmm. Terry Lamb says serial killers tend to target people that will not likely be reported missing, such as prostitutes and homeless persons. Exactly. It's easier to prey on somebody that nobody's going to notice. But that's not always the case with serial killers. They generally tend to hunt in their own demographic, although not always. But that does seem to be one of the things that the FBI statistics track is most serial killers have a specific target type, and they hunt within that type. Merrill says there's also the split between reservation police and the city or sheriff, where the boundaries do they disappear at, and who's going to take responsibility. If something happens on the reservation, they don't necessarily share it with the local civilians unless it's something that that bleeds over from one jurisdiction into another. The tribal police are federal police. They're federally sworn in through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And that's where they get their authority. Whereas if they butt right up against a county, the jurisdiction is very, very clearly delineated. And if something bad happens on the res, they have to turn it over to the feds, like the FBI. And if the FBI responds at all, they do next to nothing. And that's pathetic, because it happened on the reservation. They figure if it happened on the reservation, it doesn't affect anybody else. And that's pathetic that they react that way. and Wind River really pointed that out. If you guys get a chance to watch that movie, Wind River, you will. It's a great movie. I think I like Jeremy Renner, but I think that's one of his best movies ever.
Yeah, I think that goes hand in hand with what we're talking about with this Highway of Tears. Is RCMP, Canada's version of FBI? They're like, they're not going to be messing with it. They haven't been until people have come up to them. But have they even gotten any credible leads? That's the big thing.
In some of the cases, there's absolutely nothing. No eyewitnesses, nothing, just gone. Pork and Mean says they say the Highway of Tears is a serial killer. There's a lot of theories that they're punching around, but again, the RCMP doesn't really seem to be doing that much about it. In fact, they pretty much ignored it from 1970 to 1998. They don't know what's causing it. And in a lot of the cases of the David Paulides missing 411 cases, they've disappeared under such mysterious circumstances. They fit the criteria for the David Paulides missing 411, which leads to a possible cryptid involvement. John Allen says, my father and I saw what appeared to be a big hairy creature while hunting in the mountains of Pinna back in the 70s, and again here in Florida in the 70s. I think Pinna, he might have meant Pennsylvania, maybe. I'm guessing, but yeah, I would love to hear that story. I mean, the hunters see these things a lot, all the time, and some hunters never step foot in the woods again. A lot of hunters just absolutely refuse to come forward with a story. In some cases, it's because they don't want to be thought to be crazy, and in some they just don't want to think about it being out there. I mean, look at Kerry Arnold from Bigfoot Odyssey. Kerry Arnold was an avid deer hunter. He had his sighting, and he has not hunted since. Adam Davis says, hi, DA and guest, checking in to see what's going on tonight. Interesting topic, missing 411 type stuff. Thank you, sir. That's exactly what it is. Oh, no, that was not addressed at me. But she's right. Tribal police are limited in what they can do. Crimes committed by folks that do not live on the res. So if somebody goes on the reservation, commits a crime, and leaves, the tribal police can't even go after them, which is ridiculous.
I was never, full on law enforcement, just kind of a reserve. But I get so aggravated with the jurisdictional dick waving that goes along. It's like, just solve it. Just deal with it. It doesn't have to be a, turf war.
Derek Buckle says, are the women abducted for food, reproduction, fun? Who knows the mind of a Sasquatch? Exactly. Regardless of the reason they're being abducted, if there's a possible cryptid involvement, it needs to be addressed. It needs to be an avenue of thought. It doesn't need to be dismissed outright, because I firmly believe the government know these things exist. And for it to be completely just shushed and ignored is ridiculous, because there are cases on file. There are cases of law enforcement seeing these things. There are cases of government officials seeing these things. There are cases on file where lumber encampments have been attacked by these things. So the preponderance of evidence is out there saying that they exist. Whether or not anybody chooses to believe it or not, that's the thing. That's where you get people shoving their head in the sand like an ostrich. They're out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the high number of sightings along that area, plus the missing people, I mean, yeah, serial killer is a theory, but why wouldn't a cryptid be a working theory as well?
Well, you've got kind of 50 years. I mean, I think you kind of alluded to that, Doc. I mean, this is, at this point in 2022, that is one crusty ass serial killer.
Yeah, and that's 40 that they know of, that they've actually publicly admitted. The Native American tribe, the First Nations tribes are saying that number is much, much higher. And we may never know exactly how many have gone missing along that road. One, it's extremely isolated. Two, so many of them have gone missing just like a puff of smoke in the wind, with no trace whatsoever. And, if it is a serial killer, it's an extremely prolific serial killer. Opportunistic scavengers, yes. Animal predation, possibly. But we can't say for 100% certainty that there's no such thing as these cryptid encounters, because They're happening. They're happening across the globe. They're being seen by people who are of unimpeachable character: judges, doctors, lawyers, law enforcement. And so it's not just the old joke that we used to say about every time a tornado would touch down, there'd always be that one guy from the Ozarks here with 2 teeth in his mouth going, "Yeah, standing out in the yard when the nader went through, and I got it on my Polaroid." Yeah, I've got family like that, so that's not too much of a joke. But it's not just a case of weirdos in the woods seeing it. People out there who are drinking or doing other pharmaceutical things. It's not just that. There are people from all walks of life are reporting seeing these creatures, and the reports are becoming more common. And I think that's large part because of social media, and people are less stigmatized than they were. But you still, if you've got a certain profession, like Steve was saying, you can't go on record and say, "This is what I saw," because then it destroys your credibility, and you could very well lose your professional degree or your licensing. Tony Harris says the book Us and Them: How Neanderthal Predation Created Modern Humans is extremely interesting and paints Neanderthals as more of a Bigfoot creature rather than just a big dumb cousin. I 100% agree. I've got that book right over here on my shelf. It's a fantastic book, and it does really make it checks a lot of the boxes on where does Bigfoot come from when you read that. Yeah.
Well, and you touched on an interesting point, DA, with the people with professional careers. I mean, it goes back to the UFO thing. Why do these pilots and military personnel not report it? Because their careers would be ruined if they did. People would think they're crazy.
Adam Davis says, I've seen too much evidence of dogmen around Germantown, Ohio, and adjacent areas for my personal comfort. I'm right there with you, man. I totally get it. I mean, hell, Jody Cook, the founder of the North American Dogman Project, lives in Ohio. And if you go to the North American Dogman Project's website, which is northamericandogmanproject.com, they have photos on there of tracks they've casted. And they're canine tracks. You could look at them and tell they're some sort of canid, but he's got one with a ruler next to it. It's over 8 inches long. That'd be the biggest damn dog I've ever seen with an 8-inch track. It also has a tapered, slightly elongated heel, which speaks to something that's using that for balance, not just running on the pad. Tanya Willis says, just as recently as the 1990s, 2 tribes were in conflict over uranium mines. The government stepped in and said, no, it's ours and not yours. It's another great example. As soon as something valuable is found on the reservation, the government's taking it. Werewolf 5674 says, if people were being taken by cryptids and killed, there would be signs of predation. So there's more answer than just them being taken by cryptids. Most of the cryptid cases, especially if you look at the missing 411, the commonality seems to be no trace left behind. And a lot of because they just pick them up and carry them off. Predators like a bear or wolves or coyotes or a mountain lion will leave sign of the attack. You will find where the ground has been destroyed. You're going to find blood because claws and teeth were involved. But in the case of Bigfoot, they are just so freaking massively stronger than us. Picking somebody up and throwing them over the shoulder and carrying them off is be like one of us picking up a toddler. They might kick and scream, but they ain't going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm way behind on comments. Adam Davis says, tons of prints, deer kills that were definitely not normal coyote predation or poaching. Personally, I've had many sightings in one case of human remains. It doesn't surprise me. Dogman is every encounter that I've ever taken or read of dogmen, they always use the word demonic or hellish when they describe the creature. Mm-hmm. It's never a friendly encounter. You always get these outlying Bigfoot stories where, like, I was trapped under a log and Bigfoot picked it up and freed me. You get these occurrences where Bigfoot was helpful. And I'm not saying that's always the case, because any big predator is capable of doing something unexplainable. Bears, for example, grizzly bears, you could walk around a corner and almost run nose to nose one, as I did. I walked around a corner in a trail and there it was, and we leaped at each other. And I don't speak bear, but the look on his face was probably the same oh shit look I had on my face. And I told my buddies not to run because it could have encouraged it to chase him. And all I heard was and I looked back, and sure enough, every one of those assholes was gone. They left me there with the bear. And I looked back at the bear, and the bear looked at me, and I took a step back, and it took a step off the trail, and we agreed to disagree and went our opposite directions. And I wasn't eating that day. But had that been right at the end of season when the weather's starting to turn cold and Mr. Bear was looking to pad his belly before he went into hibernation, I might have been a missing 411 case myself.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then another bear dies of heart disease.
That's right. I gave that poor bear heart disease. Or at least a case of the trots, one of the two.
Ruin his gallbladder.
Trying to look for comments that this is a good one. Crystal Law says in regards to cross species breeding, there was a recently documented case of Zana. I remember reading about that. She was that they had captured her, and they believed she was the offspring, and she had children with several people from the village in that Russian village. They believed she was she was a wild woman. They found her in the woods. She was hairy, was able to carry extremely heavy loads that grown men couldn't carry, and she had children by a few members of the village, and her sons were said to be really odd looking and of remarkable strength. Which cryptid was captured, impregnated. She had offspring which survived. There's a couple of documentaries on that about when they're trying to chase the DNA back on that. But she was definitely what they called a wild woman that lived in the woods, was covered in hair, and didn't wear a lot of clothing or any clothing. And they captured her in this Russian village and held her captive, and they eventually domesticated her to the point where a couple of the village people had kids with her. Lanita says, "Have we hit on aliens? We know where they're taking people." We didn't really talk about that, but that falls right into the missing 411. I mean, we don't know what's taking the people in the missing 411 cases. We can't say it's not aliens. We can't say it's not cryptids. We can't say it's not a serial killer. All we know is people are vanishing in large numbers and leaving no trace. And in a lot of the cases, dogs that are specifically trained to track people that are lost in the woods refuse to follow the trail. That in and of itself should tell you something weird's going on, because those dogs live to track that trail. I've worked with police dogs that were trained to track people, and that dog cannot wait to get out of that vehicle and get on that track. And that is just what they love to do. They're conditioned to it. They're good at it. And when you get one that just sits down and is like, not doing it, there's a reason it ain't tracking it. Oh, I am. Every time I think I'm catching up, I'm like 60 comments behind.
Well, we've kept nearly 90 people busy for the last hour and a half, so there's a lot to go through there.
Folks, I am so far behind. I'm just scrolling down looking for the word question at the beginning. So if you have a question you want us to read on the air and answer, in capital letters, put the word question at the beginning and then ask your question so I can easily spot it, because the comments are flying so fast I can't keep up. John Allen says, DA, thanks for the book. Read it and love it, but I already had heard it on your podcast. Thanks again. Keep them coming. I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. Thank you so much. I'm going to scroll down quickly, but I'm just looking for that word question. God dang. How many comments have I missed? Dude. It's a full-time job just to monitor the comments. Oh my God, they're coming fast tonight. Which is awesome. I love the fact that you guys are so active in the chat. And a lot of it's conversation back and forth, which is awesome too, that everybody's discussing different things and talking about what's going on in the chat amongst themselves. Oh yeah, Anthony says I've read about this. DA says polar and brown bear breed now. They're finding hybrids that are part polar bear and part grizzly bear. They're finding those in northern ranges in Canada, which it's astounding people, because a hunter thought it's illegal to shoot a polar bear, and a hunter who had a permit to hunt grizzly bear shot one, and when he got up close to it, he started seeing white hair, and he's like, "Oh crap, I'm going to prison." And so he called the game warden, admitted, I thought this was a grizzly bear. And the game warden started looking at it, and he's like, this is showing signs of grizzly bear and polar bear. So they sent it in for DNA testing, and sure enough, it was a hybrid. And those are happening. John Abraham says, do you guys believe the government has groups that deal with cryptids? Yes, I do. There's so many stories about military groups going after aggressive groups of Bigfoot or other creatures, that they had to go in and deal with ones that were preying on people. That was the whole premises behind me coming up with my Codename Wild Hunt series. Michelle Cox says, DA, there's a whole section of tribal cops that investigated the cryptic stuff. Very interesting. See, because the Native Americans just accept it as part of the natural world. They believe it is a real thing, and they accept it. Why can't we do that? Why can't we go, there's so much here, we need to accept this as a possibility, and not just go, oh, you're crazy, and then blow it completely off. Mondoc 40 Research says, in Montana, a CO cannot be post-certified as detention corrections officer because the state law does not recognize the tribal police as a valid police organization. That's ridiculous. That's why they get their mandates from the federal government through the BIA. I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't pronounce. Is that Coral Ayune or Ayun? I live in Canada. Latest theory about the Highway of Tears is it's two people and possibly indigenous. That's terrifying. If it's two people doing it, then it's a serial killer team, which is pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't make the Bigfoot connection to just absolutely say these people are going missing and it's Bigfoot. I didn't do that. I did that because I wanted to bring attention to what's going on the Highway of Tears. Yeah, if it's missing 411 style, possibly there could be a Bigfoot connection. We know the Bigfoot sightings up in that area are a huge percentage. There are a lot of Bigfoot sightings up there. But my end goal of this was just to bring attention to the Highway of Tears, to what's going on up there, because the RCMP just didn't seem to be taking it seriously. Lanita says, I heard the Kodiak Bears are moving into different territory and taking over. Most of the Kodiaks are on the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska, but bears swim. They found polar bears miles out to sea fishing. So bears can swim. So you get these big Alaskan brown bear, these Kodiak bears, if they're coming ashore to mainland Alaska, their only real competition once they hit land is the coastal brown bear, and Kodiaks are bigger than them. So yeah, I could easily see the Kodiak starting to interbreed into populations and creating a new species of bear, or at least a subspecies of bear. And that's a terrifying thought, because those are big, aggressive bears.
Yeah.
John Allen says, I will and would really like to tell you my experiences. John, reach out to me at daroberts@daroberts.net and get a hold of me, and I'd love to hear your stories, and then maybe we could see about, if you were interested, maybe getting you on the air, getting on the show.
It'd be awesome. All right.
Tammy Lamb says, maybe the authorities do know what's happening but refuse to say because it's cryptid related. It's entirely possible.
And DA, I have got company here tonight, and so I'm going to go and step away.
Okay, brother.
I'm going to try to hang with them. I could hang with you guys all night. It's always a pleasure, but I got to visit with the family, and I will
totally
catch you all on the flip trip. Okay.
Hey, I'm glad that Rachel's feeling better.
Me too. It was some much needed surgery and put off for far too long. The surgeon even said that when he got it out, he's like, yeah, this should have been done a couple of years ago. We're like, yeah, no kidding. But, all right. You guys take care.
All right. Thanks,
You
brother.
too, brother.
Have a good night. Be safe, man.
You too, guys.
Yeah. Get back over to that. Yeah, if you want to contact us to tell us your story, there's my email address. It's daroberts@daroberts.net. I'd love to talk to you about your story and maybe get you on here. Werewolf 5674 says, it seems like a Bigfoot that live in high mountains, extreme cold, extremely isolation, a lot of snow, long cold seasons are more aggressive than others. Exactly. I think that's why the stories that would come out of Alaska, like the one Fred was telling, was far more aggressive. Those colder climates, they require a great deal of protein to maintain body mass and to survive. And you just don't get that level of protein from eating plants. Werewolf 5674 says, I obviously have polar bear genetics. Okay. I'm slowly getting closer to the bottom of this.
There's a ton of comments, brother.
Yeah. Adam Davis says, yeah, I know Jody Cook personally. Used to be one of the founders of the NADP until I resigned last year. I'm the Region 2 director now, which I'm really enjoying getting involved in. Adam, I'd love to hear your stories. John Abraham says, I live in Michigan. Dogman is big up here. Derek Buckles says, I'm thinking of driving back roads here, looking for anything odd. Derek, if you're going to do that, I would go on Amazon, and this is a dash cam that I bought on there. It was like $40, and it will take up to a 32 gigabyte SIM card. Yeah, if you're going to drive back roads looking for stuff, have one of these on hand. It's a lot faster and more stable than trying to get your cell phone out. Yeah. Adam says, yeah, bears, coyotes, cougars are all good reasons to carry a good sized caliber defensive handgun while hiking. Exactly. You know, just because it might not be a cryptid in the area doesn't mean something out there might not try to eat you. Werewolf 5674 says, I've always been told that if your feet are big, another part of your okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's bad. Astro Blaster says, big hand, big feet, big disappointment. Oessa Khan says, do the dogs lay down or whine? What I've read, dogs will basically just sit down, whine, and refuse to track. Some have even turned around and ran back to the vehicle. Adam Davis says, dogs' behavior are a good indicator of dogman lurking around, along with the complete absence of normal forest sound. I've been in the woods when it went absolutely quiet like that, and that is what we refer to as a butt-puckering moment. Mondoc 40 in research. There you go. Thanks a lot, man. Put that big question up there. It says, have you done a show about the negative blood type? No, I have not. That's something that I'd have to have a chit chat with Doc about, because he is far more versed in medical background than I. And that'd be one you'd probably be leading the conversation on, Doc.
I could do that.
Derek Buckle says, are there any fundraisers or charities that people may donate to for this area, DA? I don't know off the top of my head. If there are, anybody have a link to possibly one, or be able to Google that to find out if there's any charities in cases like that that they can donate to, and I would be happy to put the link up on the screen. So if anybody knows about that, Tanya, you especially, if you know about the charities related to the missing missing and murdered Indigenous women, let me know, and we'll get that put up on the screen. Another question, Wissa says, do you know if the dogs lay down? Oh, I did that one. Okay, here we go. Tony says, question, didn't Bigfoot Files have a piece on Zana? I read that scientists determined her DNA to be sub-Saharan African. I think that was a cop-out, because I don't think that's the case. I think that's what was put out for public dissemination. Because half of the stuff we see on these documentaries on History Channel or Animal Planet, they're basically just cryptid reality shows. They're never going to find anything. They're never going to change anything. They're never going to prove anything. They're there to entertain and nothing more. So especially when History Channel did that thing on the mermaid's body found, that I thought was an actual documentary on mermaid footage, because that's the way they presented it. I didn't find out till I got to the end of the mockumentary that it was fake. And basically, it's killing their credibility. I don't even know if I believe their historical shows anymore, because they sensationalize everything. And these are basically just the space. So we look at all these Bigfoot shows; they're just reality TV with cryptids, and you can tell by the way they act. There's one, I won't say what it is, but you can basically tell every time they hear something that they claim is a cryptid, they basically fall all over themselves running away. And it's the same format they have with a couple of the ghost shows, where somebody always says, "Just then, at that exact moment," in every episode, and then something happens and the one guy runs over the cameraman running away. And that's every episode. Most of these quote unquote paranormal or cryptid shows are just creepy reality TV. And it's hard to put any stock in any of them, because their only concern is ratings. They're not really concerned with presenting real information. And I hate to lump them all in together, but that seems to be the case. Yeah. Where you get most of your facts, and I'm not necessarily even including us, because we try to present as much factual information as we can, but where you get most of your facts are a lot of these YouTube channels where they talk about cryptids. And because they're not forced to provide certain content to meet the network's standards. So be careful what you take as gospel from some of these shows, because it's probably just made for reality TV level stuff. So take anything you see anywhere with a grain of thought, a grain of salt. The best method for you to gather information on cryptids is through your own research and your own reading. There's a lot of resources out there. And firsthand experience also carries a lot of weight. If you spend any time in the woods, if you've observed anything, because people on these shows try to present themselves as Bigfoot experts or Dogman experts or Chupacabra experts or whatever the subject is, paranormal experts. The real truth is there are no experts in these fields. It's not something that you can go get a PhD in. These are reality TV shows, and anybody that claims to be an expert is just trying to sell you something or to get ratings. First-hand encounter stories of actual sightings, some of the better books that are written on the subject, and your own research and your own observations are the best sources of information on this. And I found that a lot of the podcasts are actually telling their own encounters, their own stories, and those are some really good sources too. There's some great ones out there. We had a guy on the other night from Sasquatch Odyssey. That's a great one. Bigfoot Odyssey also with Carrie Arnold's a great one. Some of these are really good sources, and those are the ones I would trust over reality TV. John Doe says dog behavior is a good indicator of most predators being in the area. Yeah, I've seen that with my own dogs in the past. Ron Yelton says Navajo Rangers are the cryptid hunters. I've got a buddy who's from the Navajo reservation. I need to talk to him about that. Tony Harris says, John, that's why I need a dog. I stay out in the national forest a lot. Man, I cannot get caught up on these comments.
Nope, they're rolling in fast, brother.
And again, I apologize if I miss your comment or question, but I'm specifically looking for that big word question to see if I can actually catch the questions. Okay, I think I'm finally caught up. Tony Willis says, I've never seen the show. It was mentioned in an article I was reading about Zana's story. I'd like to read the article. Yeah, hey, Ellen Harrington says, or hunting as in research. Yeah, but basically, that's your own personal observations and research. Tanya Willis says she emailed me some links. Let me grab those links and I'll get them over here. I'm going to put every one of these links in directly into the chat. Tanya Willis sent me some links for some of the charities involved with this subject. And if you guys wanted to donate to these charities, that would be amazing. I just posted those directly into the chat. There's 4 different links there. Check them out and help raise awareness for this. John Doe says, I would suspect that sub-Saharan African is correct, but not the full story. I agree. That might be sub-Saharan African might be the mother. It was like in some of the DNA studies done here. Human mother, unknown father. It could be a case like that. Astroblaster says, I agree, DA. The mockumentaries are a joke. Some are entertaining like Mountain Monsters, but not to be taken seriously. I prefer this format. MK Davis and the like. And we've had MK on the show. A heck of a guy and a lot of knowledge. There we go. That's a good point. John Doe says, or that such analysis is more likely sub-Saharan African is the closest we can get to it. Screw it. He might be right. They might have said, that's as close as we can get. We're done. John Allen says, Ellen, no, we were trying to put down. Oh, it's because killing stock on a farm in Florida. Tanya Willis says, these are the organizations that support and bring awareness to MMIW. There you go, folks. All 4 of those links are in the chat. Hopefully you guys will check those out. John Doe says, and it is mentioned that even in said study, the parts are unknown. Well, there you go. That's exactly proves my case.
Yeah.
Folks, if you are new to the channel, I should have probably done this an hour or so ago, but if you're new to the channel, if you're just joining us tonight, hit that like and subscribe button down on the bottom of the screen on the YouTube if you're joining us there. And, make sure you hit that little bell icon because that'll give you an update anytime we go live. And share the videos. Share the videos with people you know that enjoy this type of content. That helps the channel continue to grow, and I appreciate you guys supporting the channel. Also, at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice a little button that says Join. You can join the channel. There are a couple of different levels, and the upper level will get you access to exclusive video content. I've got one video up now. There's going to be more coming. In fact, I'm hoping to, with the ice finally melting in the area, I'm going to be able to get out in the next week or so to shoot at least a couple more videos. Some of the videos I shoot will go directly up on the regular YouTube channel for anyone, and some of them are going to be exclusive for the Patreon and the YouTube members. So keep an eye out for those, folks. Oh, there we go. Got a question. Derek Buckle says, DA, have you ever had Linda Godfrey on the show? No, I reached out to her and haven't heard back from her, but I know she's a very busy lady. I would love to get her on the show, so I'm going to continue to reach out to people like that, and hopefully get some very interesting guests. John Allen says, love your channel, and we'll watch it whenever it's on. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Tony Willis says, thank you to everyone for discussing the main topic compassionately and respectfully. Thank you very much, Tanya, for all your help in this. This is something I feel very passionately, very strongly about. And again, I brought up the Bigfoot connection because it gets people involved in the conversation. Even if Bigfoot is taken off the board and it's just human malice, human predators that are doing this, throwing Bigfoot into the conversation gets people talking. And my whole goal, as I said at the beginning of the video, my entire goal was just to get people to talking about this and to generate awareness. So whether you believe it's a cryptid encounter, whether you believe it's human or animal or just simply people that don't want to be found, whatever you believe the case might be. And I think there's definitely more than one factor. I don't think it's any one of those. I think it's a combination of things. When you have that many people missing, I think it's a combination of things. So whatever the reasoning, whatever the reason is happening with all these missing people, we need to focus on it. Sorry, I tried to hit the mute button, and I was already mid sneeze. That already gone too far to come back at that point. But yeah, the whole point of this was to increase awareness and to bring attention to this subject, and hopefully, we might help to make a little bit of difference. We can't solve any of these problems we're talking about. We can't solve any of them alone, but together we can really, reach out and make a bigger difference than any one individual. John Doe says there are some subjects that deserve to be taken seriously and with appropriate respect, and this is one of them. I wholeheartedly agree. Adam Davis says Josh Turner might be able to help get Linda Godfrey on here. She's pretty close with her, as I understand. That would be awesome. Tanya Willis says strongly suggest following these hashtags: hashtag MMIW, hashtag MMAW, hashtag No More Stolen Sisters. Yeah, check those hashtags out, folks, and share those. Post them on your Facebook, post them on your Twitter or Instagram, because every time we put it out there, it gets in front of more people. So we want to bring this subject, and whether you think Bigfoot is involved, whether you think it's serial killers or opportunistic predators or animals or whatever the reason, these people, these women deserve the attention to be placed on this to find out what the hell is happening, and hopefully bring some of them home, if at all possible. Doc will be right back. He's taking a moment. Fred in Alaska says, I agree with taking it seriously. I strongly agree. Thank you, sir. Fred is if you guys remember the gentleman, Fred from the night that we had on, had him on telling his encounter stories from Alaska. Fred, I want to get you back on the show sometimes, because I know you've got more stories you'd like to tell. I would love to have you on the show again. I've been intending to reach out to you and just hadn't gotten it done. The last couple of weeks I've been scatterbrained. My aunt passed away last week, but they held off the funeral until this weekend to give family that lives scattered across the U.S. a chance to get in. So, the funeral was today, and the last couple of weeks I've been pretty scattered. So, give me a few days, folks. I'm not 100%. I'm probably not even 40, but we're getting there, and we'll get back there. John Allen says, a lot of people want to live under a rock and never experience anything that's outside their bubble, but they have to wake up sometime. And that's the thing. When a lot of people have a cryptid encounter, people that have gone their entire lives going, oh, BS, that couldn't possibly be real. You're making it up. Everybody that claims they've seen it's crazy. And the moment they see one for the first time, it changes everything. Because suddenly those stories you heard when you were a little kid about the monster under your bed don't seem so freaking far-fetched. Suddenly your paradigm shifts, and you realize that there are things out there that we don't fully understand. And this planet is a big, big place. We know less about the bottom of our own ocean than we do about the surface of the moon. Not to mention some of the wildernesses, like up in Canada, along that particular area. If you go up through British Columbia, we're talking areas of wilderness that may never have had a person walk through it. That some of these remote valleys and mountains, no one may have ever walked there. They're that dense and that remote. So to say we know everything, every species, every animal that has or will exist on this planet is ludicrous. We don't know everything. We're finding new stuff all the time. The billy ape is a perfect example of Western science going, oh, no. There are no killer gorillas out there. Well, you're right. It's not a gorilla. It's somewhere between a gorilla and an eastern chimpanzee. It's about 6 foot tall. It walks on its hind legs, on its back legs. Walks upright most of the time, and the locals called them lion hunters, which most people, when they heard the story, were like, no, there's no primates that hunt lions. Well, they were wrong. The Billy Ape proved them wrong. And that's just one example. Every once in a while, we find something big. New species are discovered almost daily. Granted, 75-80% of the time, it's an insect. We're finding new species of insect all the time. Entomologists are just having a field day in the Amazon basin alone. But again, every once in a while, we find something big. We found a new species of shark, the megamouth shark. That was what, I want to say that was in the 70s or 80s when they dredged one up with an anchor. They were like, what the hell is that? They didn't know what it was. New species are found all the time. And again, we know less about the bottom of our ocean than we do the surface of the moon. So we couldn't possibly understand every life form on this planet. We have not been to every place on this planet. There are many, many, many places that man has never been. And there are things out there we don't know. And I firmly believe Dogman and Bigfoot are two of them. And it's definitely something that we've got to take more seriously. Fred certainly just shoot me an email. Sorry for your loss, buddy. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Let's see. Looking for questions. So, folks, thank you all for your well wishes. It's a process. I mean, my Aunt Bonnie was like a second mom to me. I spent more time at her house from about 12 on than I did at my own house. Her son Billy, her youngest son Billy, and I were basically like brothers growing up. Mark Napier says the Billy Ape scares the crap out of me. Yeah, me too. It's not something I want to run into.
No.
John Allen wants to know if you've got your jack.
Do I have my jack? No. Knob Creek.
Knob Creek?
Yeah.
I put all mine over there. I'm thinking about cracking into some of that Jameson. Here we go. John Doe says, question, what would a 1,000-pound ape eat? Answer, whatever the hell it wants. Pretty much.
Yeah.
You are 100% on with that. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sam, for looking that up. Sam Melton corroborated that for me. The megamouth shark wasn't discovered until 1976. We had no idea it existed until then. Yeah, this is a great one. Adam Davis says, we rediscovered the coelacanth, assumed extinct for tens of millions of years. And then they find out the people of Madagascar think they're tasty. They've been eating them for generations. Like, oh no, this thing's been extinct since the time of the dinosaurs. They're like, no.
I just had one for supper last night. So
it's good with a little lemon on it. Michelle Cox says, Billy apes remind me of the book Zoo, scary. If you guys want to look up the Billy ape, it's B-I-L-I, Billy. It's the Billy region of the Congo, B-I-L-I. So if you look up Billy ape, you're probably going to get a picture of a chimp in overalls with a wide-brimmed hillbilly hat, chewing tobacco. Billy the Bubba ape. But if you're looking up the Billy ape, it's B-I-L-I. John Doe says humans don't even properly understand humans, let alone the animals and plant life. You ain't wrong, man.
Dude, I just saw a picture of that thing. That Billy ape is jacked.
Yeah.
Holy hell.
They've been noted as making war on each other, on gorillas and on chimpanzees. They are nasty. They are very aggressive. And that's roughly human size. It's around 6 foot tall and walking on its hind legs. And chimpanzees are on an order of about 10 times stronger than humans. It makes you wonder how much stronger that thing is. And if it's around 6 foot tall, then you transfer that same strength parameter to another primate known as Bigfoot, who has been seen as high as, 10, 11, in some cases 15 feet tall in Alaska. Now, the 15 footers I probably would estimate are probably extremely rare. They would definitely be considered giants, but even an 8 footer would be tremendously strong.
Yeah.
Astroblaster says 90% of the animals that ever lived will never be known. Fossilization only saves a few, and many are buried far beneath the earth and sea that we'll never find. Yeah, fossilization is such a rare occurrence. When they find fossils, they say it's 1 out of every several million animals that are ever fossilized. And we know Gigantopithecus was a real creature. It was the largest ape species supposedly ever lived. It was 10, 12 feet tall on its hind legs. It was massive. And they know it exists only because of a few teeth and a chunk of jawbone. That's all that's ever been found. Almost no fossils have been found of apes or chimps. No, almost none. What they do find rarely are teeth, and that's about it. That's because if you pass away in a hot and humid environment like the jungle, you're not going to be left there long enough to be packed into the earth and become a fossil. Your scavengers are going to scatter them bones far and wide. Tanya Willis says, good night all, much love and be kind, relative in trouble calling. Hey, hope everything's okay. Wish you the best. I hope everything's all right. And thank you for being part of the show tonight. Yeah. Thank you for all your input and your help. Tanya, you're awesome. I hope you have a great night. Thank you. I've missed the first part of that. John Doe says proper ordnance to kill the largest Bigfoot include anti-tank weapons such as the javelin.
Yeah, that and the Carl Gustav. Carl G.
Yeah. The what is that? 700 Nitro Express.
Kills on one end, maims on the other.
That's right. John Doe, so speaking of which, that's what I will post about next on the Discord. Awesome. Michelle Cox says, I was excited to find half a bottle of Knob Creek in my closet today. That's a great find right there.
That's a win. That's like finding a 20 in your pocket.
That's right. Tony Harris says, just today I was reading about a hominid species, and they were literally only had 3 specimens, and these were just various bone fragments, jaw bones, etc. We know nothing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, 100%.
Ada Quester says, DA, my favorite one of what I'm not sure. Well, yeah, you're probably not the only one thinking about that. I was going to say something.
And talking about how we know nothing,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's no experts, like you said earlier. I like that. There's no expert in this. There's just theories.
But when we start talking about Bigfoot and things like that, I've added a couple of new tools to my arsenal. And this is something we'll get to play with at more length. Carrie, hopefully you'll get out this way. Yep. And it's not a high dollar or high quality one, but I've got an IR scope now, thermal, and I've got this solar charger kit. It's an emergency radio combination solar charger for your phone or other electronic equipment. So I can just plug it in, hook it up, and recharge equipment out in the field.
Awesome. And I was going to let you know too, I've got a thermal scope on the way as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Anthony says the Billy Ape used clubs to beat their prey. Holy moly, I didn't know that.
Damn.
That's bad. John Doe says after Jurassic World, I believe it's 750 Nitro Express that is rated for T-Rex on its website. Another one that's supposedly rated for T-Rex is the Marlin 1897 XM, I think it is. I think that's what it's called, and it's a 4570 lever action.
Yeah. That's
Henry makes a 4570 lever action as well.
Yeah, the Marlin is the 1895 big loop.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's the big loop. That's the one that Chris Pratt used in Jurassic World.
John Doe says, and that's very relevant to dogmen particularly. Of course, humans haven't found the required ancestor if it's a biological thing which evolved. In the cases like, and I know John Doe mentioned this in the Discord, and again, if you guys haven't been part of the Discord, I hope you guys go over and check it out, because we have a lot of conversations going on over there, and I answer questions and pop in and chat about different stuff. But one of the things that we were talking about is that it was cynocephaly, the condition known as dog-headed or baboon-like headed, but more described as dog-headed men. Baboons were once described as cynocephali because they had a dog-like head. They have a dog, So cynocephali might even apply to Gugway because they are said to have a pronounced snout. But cynocephali is a condition that's been reported down through the centuries, and we've talked about this quite a few times. Even a Catholic saint was supposedly be the dog-headed saint. So I think these creatures have been around for a long time. I think they're very, very reclusive, and I think they're aggressive. And in the case of the Dogman stories, we definitely encounter stories that did not end well for people. So Dogman is, I think, been around for a very long time, and it does not have our best interests at heart. It's a predator.
No. Yeah.
John Doe says paleontology can only tell you about what is known, and while it can tell you a lot about that nowadays, there are always going to be gaps. You're not wrong.
No.
Fred in Alaska says some just have more experience collecting evidence than others. No experts in this field. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, man, it's a lot of it's coincidental. A lot of people in the right place, right time, and just get a boatload of evidence, and that's going to help other researchers out. But if they've got the most evidence, then they're going to come out. A lot of folks will say, "Oh, they're an expert." No, they just got more evidence, for sure.
Derek Buckle says, I received a flashlight that once charged and can also be used to charge phones, etc. off USB. This thing, I found it on Amazon, and it's really pretty cool. It's got multiple bands of radio, including the wideband emergency bands. It has that built in. It has a built-in flip-up reading light. There's the solar charger panel right here. It has a flashlight on it, and that little dot right there is an emergency strobe, LED strobe, which can be seen from long distances. On the back, you see it's got a hand crank. It has its own internal storage batteries with lithium ion, and also you can put in, which I haven't done yet because I just got this, you can also put 3 AAA batteries in there to help keep the charge going.
Dude,
so this thing is extremely versatile, and it was only like $30.
Hey, do you have the link for that? I'd be interested in that, man.
Let me pull that link up.
That's a cool little gadget to have, for sure.
Let me go back to my order history and talk amongst yourselves.
Talk amongst yourselves. Getting awfully clamped over here.
Come off the clamped. Let me go back and find it. I also got the newest generation of the SAS, the most recent printing of the SAS Survival Guide. I've got the older ones and the little pocket one, but I got the newest one, the 3rd edition. So I've got that to add to my collection.
Yeah, I'm gonna look for that thing when you pop it up there.
And I am putting it into the chat right now. Excellent. This is that little. It's 2,000 milliamps. NOAA emergency weather radio, model A1 portable power bank with solar charging, hand crank, and battery operated. SOS alarm, AM, FM, LED flashlight for outdoor emergencies. It's $25. And I've just started playing with mine, and every time I play with it, I'm more impressed with it.
That is a cool little radio, man.
It's a neat little gadget.
Well, it's got 23,191 reviews on it too, so they're all pretty good. It's like over 4.5 stars, so that's not bad. Huh?
It is a neat little piece of tech. It's something I'm pretty happy to add to my go bag.
Yeah, that's pretty solid, man.
23,000 reviews, and it's all like 4.5 stars. That should tell you it's a pretty good little product.
Heck yeah. That's pretty neat. I'm going to buy one now.
Yeah, you won't be sorry. I mean, and it also comes with its own little cord, which has a D-ring on it, so you can just clip it to a pack strap.
Yeah. I would even say go into get you, if you wanted to make it a little waterproof, throw it into a little small Pelican cases or a Magpul. Crap! I just vapor locked on what the name of it is. Magpul DACA pouch.
I just went to Walmart and bought a dry bag.
There you go.
I just throw any electronic stuff in that, roll it up, seal it up, throw it in my pack. They can, pour down rain, cats and dogs, and the stuff's not getting in that dry bag.
That's solid. Yeah.
Yeah, I swear by them dry bags. I've been using them for a long time.
Yeah, I got one when I bought my truck. It came with the off-road package or whatever, and I have used that bag, and I've got a lot of stuff stored in it. There's like a quick little kind of go bag that's hey, it's gonna be weatherproof.
I can't tell you how many times a dry bag has saved my ass when I was going canoeing. You just throw your wallet, cell phone, wristwatch, anything you don't want to get wet in that dry bag and roll it up and seal it, drop it in the canoe. And if you flip that bad boy, which if you get in rough water, it ain't hard to do.
No.
You're just basically going to chase it down the river, but they don't get wet.
Yeah, my little brother Keith was a big scuba diver years ago, and he swore by his dry bag. Swore by it.
John Doe says, if you like that kind of odd military official documents, I have 26 gigabytes of pictures folders, which has gradually become more of a documents folder. I've got a file on my computer with just crap tons of PDFs of those old military survival survival bags, survival books, jungle survival, urban survival.
Oh, yeah.
I've got shit tons of those manuals. If anybody wants them, I'm happy to share them because it didn't cost me anything. Tony Harris says the J.C. Johnson photo shows a possible Sasquatch 12 to 14 feet tall in New Mexico. That's a big rascal. That's something that throw your flip your truck over on its roof without breaking a sweat.
Wow.
Meg Mills says, so I'm trying to get home and I'm driving on a back road and it's not totally back road, but there's these bright lights and they look like planes, but they're super bright, and trying to watch the chat. Watch the road. Careful of those lights. If they're that bright, it might very well possibly be helicopters looking for somebody that's missing. As I've seen that, when you're like in cases where you get somebody that's running, you got a runner from a vehicle. You'll have the highway patrol helicopter in the area lighting up everything.
Yeah.
So that could be the case, or you might be having a UFO sighting. In which case, try to get some pictures. Yeah, Fred says, "Careful, Meg. Don't get beamed up." Michelle Cox says, "I live in New Mexico. Never dull." What part of New Mexico? When I was a kid for several years, we lived in a little town in northeastern New Mexico called Clayton. My brother still lives there.
That is
brother and his wife.
That is a tiny little town, brother.
It is. My brother and I were just talking about it today, and when we lived there, the population was about 3,800 on a good day, and he said the town is practically dried up. It's about 2,000 now.
Yeah,
it used to be known as the last little cow town in America, and all those big cattle operations sold out. So those cattle operations are gone. So when that went, a good chunk of the heart of that town went.
Yeah. What was the name of that girl, that barrel racer, 11-time world champion barrel racer?
Charmaine James.
Charmaine James. Yes, I took that picture when I had to drive down that class in Lubbock the other day, and as I was driving through, I clicked it. It was like, you'll get a kick out of that.
You sent me that picture, and I texted you back. I was immediately, what the hell are you doing in Clayton, New Mexico?
Yeah, it was totally unexpected.
Michelle Cox says, Northern New Mexico. I know Clayton. I live in Lamy, Santa Fe Wilds. Nice. I spent a lot of time up in the Raton area and Raton Pass and down in Santa Fe and Albuquerque. Hiked the trails around Taos. Gone up into the mountains around Albuquerque, the Sangre de Cristos. Just beautiful country out there. I mean, it's pretty arid. And one of my favorite places ever to camp was Cimarron Canyon. And that's near Taos and Red River and Eagle's Nest. And that's just a beautiful area.
That's beautiful country up there, man.
It is
really
some pretty country.
But they got some spooky shit going on up there too.
Yeah, and it's a pretty unforgiving country too. The bad thing about when you get in those desert areas and those high plains areas, if your car breaks down in the middle of the night and you look out it looks like the lights of town are just a mile away and you can make it, but they might be 40 miles away, and people have frozen to death trying to walk to this next nearest town.
And that's another thing too. They don't understand exactly how cold it gets out there. As soon as that sun drops back behind the mountains, man, you better have some cold weather gear.
Yeah,
because it's going to get chilly real quick.
Temperature will drop fast.
Yeah.
Heard a story about an old boy, and you got to be careful stopping at those roadside rest stops, because the bathrooms in those places, those little roadside rest stops, are nothing better than an outhouse. That's really all they are.
Yeah.
Old boy stopped, and this was when I lived in Clayton, and there's one just like 4 or 5 miles outside of Clayton. It's right between Clayton and Texline, Texas, which is right on the Texas border.
Yeah.
I think you know the rest stop. It's about halfway between Clayton and Texline.
I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
When I lived there, an old dude stopped because he had to take an emergency crap, and he didn't look before he sat down and got bitten right in the ball sack by a rattlesnake. He almost died.
Oh my God.
He survived, and considering what he went through, I don't know if it was worth it.
Just kill me now.
He just dropped trow and sat down, and it hit. Bam!
God almighty.
Yeah, I felt pretty sorry for that old boy.
That's horrible, man. Yeah, every time if you stop out there, we stopped at one going towards Tombstone a couple years ago. Every sign you see, watch out for rattlesnakes, watch out for rattlesnakes, danger, rattlesnakes. So
yeah, they're no joke. Tony Harris says, "Hey, DA, you ever talk about having Vic Cundiff on the show?" I don't know the guy. I've listened to his channel over the years, but he's another possibility. I might have to reach out to him. John Doe says, by anti-tank weapons, I mean literally anti-tank rifles, such as the 14.5 millimeter weapons used to kill panzers in early World War II. Yeah, those were nasty.
Oh, Michelle had a good comment here. I don't know if you saw that one. It was Jimenez Mountain for rock for cryptids too. So
next time I'm down in that area, I got to go check that out. Like I said, I still got a brother that lives in Clayton. He married a local girl and wound up staying. In fact, her family ran one of the cattle outfits that went out.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is unfortunate. I didn't even know they'd gone out. I haven't been to Clayton since, God, I think the last time I was there was 86 or 87.
Yeah. XIT still out there. So.
And Dalhart. That was a good little rodeo.
Yeah.
I liked going to the Dalhart rodeo. That was a lot of fun. Look and see if there's any other questions.
Yeah, I'm about to.
Dude, we are caught up.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, man. We're gonna have to. I'm gonna have to go visit with my kids in a little bit. So hang out with them. They flew in from Texas. Well,
we are at the 2-hour mark.
We are.
Yeah, we're getting to that area anyway. When talking about Bigfoot and the Highway of Tears, my entire goal, as stated at the beginning of the show, was just to bring awareness to this. It's sad that it took from 1970 to 1998 for the RCMP to officially do anything, and even now it doesn't seem like they're doing much.
No.
And it might be systemic racism about them being mostly indigenous, and they just don't seem to care, which is pathetic and should stop. But every missing person you should check every possible lead, even if it's somebody that says, I saw something big, brown, and hairy carrying her off into the woods. Don't blow that off. I mean, what if it was a guy that just had a really good Bigfoot suit and used that as a cover?
Yeah.
Was carrying women off dressed as Bigfoot because he knew if anybody reported to the cops, they're going to go, bullshit, that didn't happen.
Right.
So every possible angle should be explored, and attention to this needs to be brought up. It needs to be kept at the forefront. And the fact that they ignored it for so long, that kind of crap needs to stop. Fred says, DA, got to get some things done, but shoot me an email when you can, and everyone have a safe night. Fred, you be safe. Be careful up there, brother. I'll get a hold of you tonight or tomorrow, send you an email, see about getting you back on the show, man.
Yeah.
Ellen Harrington says, "Thank you for bringing awareness about the Highway of Tears, DA." That is my pleasure. Yeah, I always love the cryptid stories, and everybody knows. Anybody that knows me knows that I never get tired of talking Bigfoot. But I knew bringing Bigfoot into discussion would heat the discussion up, would get people talking about this. So whether or not you think it's Bigfoot, whether or not Bigfoot's even involved, the fact that it's happening deserves our attention. And those charities we posted, check those out. If you can donate, great, do so. But share that far and wide. Share the show. I mean, we did talk about this subject a lot, so it would be a great thing to share this. And if you enjoyed the content tonight and you haven't done so, please like and subscribe to the channel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Hit that little bell icon so you get notified whenever we go live. Punch that subscribe button like it owes you money. Just subscribe to the channel, share it far and wide, folks. The more people we get involved in the discussion, the greater the discussion we have. And maybe I can actually talk my wife into coming on full time just to handle the comments, because you saw how badly I did tonight, and I apologize for folks. I know I missed a bunch, but they were coming so fast, and it's fast and rapidly that I couldn't keep up. Machina Sowery says, "I'm so excited to be here alive. Finally made one night with you guys. I love you guys. Absolutely crazy about you. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much. You are awesome. You are welcome anytime, and we love having you." Blues and G Music says, "Wait a minute. Who's in charge here? My neighbors moved out. You guys are such a loud crowd." Well, I'm sure my wife gets tired of me, getting in here doing the show, because I tend to get a little loud sometimes myself. John Doe is currently 3 minutes behind. I'm sorry, man. Might be internet lag, but I know Restream has about a 30-second lag time from the moment I say it to the moment you hear it. So there's about 30 seconds behind, and that's just Restream. That's the way it does. Michelle Cox says, "Great discussion tonight. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for being part of this discussion." Here's one. I'll put that up. That's from Nightbot. Support the channel and get a book insider information. Join the Patreon community at patreon.com/DARobertsauthor. I hope you guys will check that out. This one's for you. Mondoc 40 and Research says, "Pocket Doc, no kidding about the temps dripping in the desert at night, sweating heads off in the daylight and crawling into Gore-Tex at night during the winter." Yeah.
That's a fact. Yeah, I mean, we went from 130 degrees down to 47. So that's a big change, brother.
And that sand does not hold heat well. It gets cold quick and stays that way. Yes, sir. So again, folks, thank you guys so much for being part of the discussion tonight. And if you would share the video with your friends that you think might enjoy this type of content, and we thoroughly enjoy hanging out and chatting with you folks. It's a great time. It's like hanging out with friends. I've said it many times. I'll say it again. We don't have fans. We have friends. And I love hanging out with you guys and talking about stuff and talking about cryptids. And occasionally we stay on topic. And tonight we did a pretty good job. For the most part, I got on a grandstand a couple of times when I was talking about people behaving themselves and treating each other right. But and that's the message. That's the takeaway, folks.
Amen.
Let's get attention to these missing Indigenous women and start understanding that we're really all one people. Stop saying you're this or that. We share blood. You cut us, we bleed. You can donate organs to other people from other groups. That tells you right there that we are one species.
Yeah.
We are one people.
Yeah, labeling does nothing but divide.
Exactly.
And we are all the same. Like you said, you peel the skin off of us, and we are going to be the same underneath. So just be kind. Doesn't cost a thing to be kind.
That's right. One of the things I learned in almost 20 years in law enforcement is really, when it all boils down to it, there are two types of people in this world. There are good people and there are bad people. Yeah. And it's up to you which one you are.
Absolutely, man.
So
Absolutely.
thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Again, I'll throw this out there. I've said it many times. Stories are journeys that we take together. And I want to thank each and every one of you for taking this journey with us. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I hope you guys will join us on Wednesday. I haven't posted the topic yet because I'm waiting to hear back from somebody. If he doesn't join, I'll have to go with an alternative. So I don't want to say just yet. And thank each and every one of you guys for being here. Steve, thank you for being here tonight. Doc, love you, brother. Thank you for being here.
Love you too, brother.
And it's been a great night. We've got a lot of conversation going, and hopefully increase some awareness. And
Amen.
to me, it would do my heart good after the day I've had to think maybe just maybe we might have helped the world just a little bit. And don't try to be better than anybody else. Just be better than you were yesterday. And that's all any of us can do. So from the bottom of my heart, all those of us here at DAX Machina and from my home, thank each and every one of you. You guys are awesome. You guys are amazing. And thank you guys for joining the family. You guys are amazing. And we will see you on Wednesday.
Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Not y'all.
Thank you for joining us tonight on DAX Machina. If you ever have an encounter of your own that you wish to discuss, contact us at daroberts@daroberts.net. You can remain completely anonymous if you wish. Pull your covers up tight and keep a nightlight burning bright. Oh, and did you forget to lock your doors?